Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today I am going to be announcing the completion of the Eldar Knoght Fandex rough draft. So if you guys have been following this, I have been working on an Eldar Knoght Fandex. For those of you who don't know what Eldar Knights is, they were basically an epic army back in the day, back in the 1990s, that GW had in their epic game, which is like what Legion Imperialis is today. And if you guys are, following the news on that, that's a new game that GW came out. It's kind of a reimagination of their epic game originally, but it doesn't have all the factions that it once did. Eldar Knights were once a faction in their epic games, and they were essentially the defenders of the Maiden Worlds, the Lelathans of the old Eldar Empire. So I was really interested in seeing what would happen if I imposed Eldar Knights into Warhammer 40k 10th edition. And essentially what that became was a project to create a 10th edition index for the army. Now, a lot of things were missing from the old 1990s, White Dwarf in regards to the Eldar Knights. There wasn't a lot of knights. There weren't a huge army overall, and they probably weren't super popular because they didn't get a lot of extra models down the road. And then, of course, when GW kind of sidelined their epic game, we never really heard of Eldar Knights again, except from a few lore tidbits here and there. So I thought it'd be a cool idea and a fun project to work on, bringing them back to life in 10th edition. And that's essentially what I've done with this Fandex. So I worked on it for the last month. There was a failed Kickstarter attempt to bring some artwork and stuff like that into the project. However, I still finished the rough draft, and I think there's some very good and well-balanced rules at play here. It's not complete yet, but I kind of want to bring you guys through what I've completed so far and my future goals for the project. So without further ado, let us go ahead and jump right into the video. So quick overview of what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be talking about the Eldar Knights Fandex and what it is. A brief look at the rules, faction focus style, so similar to what GW did with 10th edition, we're going to do with the Eldar Knights. And lastly, we're going to be talking about the Eldar Knights Kickstarter and the goals for finishing the project. So first of all, what is the Eldar Knights Fandex? So this was a project aimed to create a fully functional, yet unofficial, Eldar Knight Index in 10th edition. And again, this is a fan-made community project. It is in no way going to be something that is official GW writing or rules or anything like that. The Eldar Knight Index will be an honest interpretation of what the Eldar would field to combat their Imperial and Chaos counterparts. So again, these are the forces of the Maiden Worlds, and they're very large Knight-like models to be used to combat the forces of the Imperial Knights and the Chaos Knights, of course. And I've been working on this project for the last month with the help of the community, and I've now officially completed the rough draft with rules. And that rough draft is on our channel's Discord, so you can start playtesting it if you want to. So those of you with access to the Discord, you will have access to the rough draft and the rules for playtesting. And those of you who are interested in learning more about the project, definitely watch my previous videos on Eldar Knights, and also stick around for this video as well, because we're going to be going into some more specific details about the rules and so forth. So let's go ahead and take a brief look at the rules faction focus style, just to give you a brief glimpse of what is going to be in the index. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the army rule first and foremost. And as you guys know, the army rule is basically very important to determining the faction's general play style and how they work on the board. So their faction rule is Engines of Fate. So if your army is Eldar Knights, once per turn per model, a model with this ability can add +1 to any of the following rolls after the roll is made. Then that roll counts as modified. So you can add 1 to your advance roll, battle shock test, charge roll, damage roll, hit roll, saving throw, and wound roll. So this is once per turn per model. Now this seems very powerful, but again, remember that Eldar Knights are not an army that has a lot of models in it, and it is limited to once per turn. So you may have 4 or 5 models, or maybe even 6 models if you're fielding a lot of the cheaper Knights in your army. So it's not going to be as impactful and as OP as you guys might think. But what it does do is it kind of taps into that Eldar ability to guarantee certain things on the battlefield and make it a little bit more reliable. So, you need a 3+ to hit, maybe you roll a 2, well, you can add that +1 and make sure that actually hits. So a lot of the army doesn't actually have rerolls, and this is the primary way in which you can ensure hits, wounds, saving throws, advance rolls, and so forth. But you do have to be strategic with it because you can only use it once per model per turn. So it's not something you can infinitely use as long as you have a certain resource and stuff like that. It is very limited, and in general, the number of models you have in your army is also going to be limited as well. The other army rule that these guys have is nimble. So unlike the Imperial Knights, who only the bigger models get this kind of ability, every single model in the Eldar Knights army gets this. And essentially what it does is it basically means that each time a model makes a normal, advance, or fallback move, it can move over other models, excluding other Titanic models, and terrain features that are 4 inches or less in height as if they were not there. So this is a rule that all the big Imperial Knights have and Chaos Knights have, but the smaller armigers do not. So Eldar Knights kind of ignore this. Instead of having the ability through their Titanic might, they have the ability through being very nimble and quick and quickly move over enemy units as they please. So moving on to the detachment rule, and as the edition progresses, there will be more of these that I bring out with the index. But for now, we're only going to start out with one, and that is Tide of Battle. So basically, Tide of Battle is a little bit like a modified battle focus. So Eldar Knight models in this detachment that destroy an enemy unit in your shooting phase can make a normal move of up to 3 inches at the end of the shooting phase if they are not in engagement range of one or more enemy units, have advanced, or are battle shocked. So what that means is essentially the old Eldar battle focus where you could shoot and then move afterward d6. The Eldar Knights get it, but there's a little bit of a catch. They do have to destroy the enemy unit that they are targeting in the shooting phase. So they can't just, move out, shoot something, fail to kill it, and then move back. But they are rewarded when they do kill their target with a 3-inch move, which is pretty massive on pretty big models like Eldar Knights. However, they also cannot have advanced or, they can't also be battle shocked. So if they are battle shocked, have advanced, or are within engagement range of enemy units, they cannot use the ability. So this gives some counterplay to enemy armies as well. The other part of this is in the combat phase. So Eldar Knight models in this detachment that destroy an enemy unit in the fight phase can make a normal move of 3 inches at the end of the fight phase instead of a consolidation move if they are not within engagement range of enemy units or are battle shocked. So this is another one where, usually battle focus was only focused around shooting, but for the Eldar Knights, some of them are very combat oriented, so I did want to give something to them as well. I wanted them to be able to benefit from this ability. So instead of making a 3-inch consolidation, they can just make a 3-inch normal move, which has a lot of great applications and really helps an army that struggles with board presence as it is. Right? And just like Imperial Knights, usually they struggle with board presence because they're just so massive. They have a trouble moving throughout the board, stuff like that, getting onto objectives. Well, this kind of fixes that. If they destroy an enemy unit, then instead of, consolidating as normal with all those restrictions, they can instead just make a 3-inch move at the end of the phase. But once again, this is conditional, right? They can't be in engagement range, so essentially they have to not only kill their target, but make sure they're out of engagement range of other enemy units. They also cannot be battle shocked. So if there's any battle shock effects on them, they will also not be able to use this ability. So this is a very powerful ability, but do keep in mind that the prerequisites for it are that you have to destroy an enemy unit, which gives your opponent some ability to counterplay it and counter it accordingly. All right, so let's look at one of their key stratagems. So this is the stratagem that I chose to kind of showcase for today. There's 6 of them that the Eldar Knights have access to, and this one is a 2 to 3 command point stratagem that happens in your opponent's shooting phase or fight phase just after an enemy unit has resolved its attacks. So you target one damaged Eldar Knight unit from your army. So every Eldar Knight has a damaged profile. That means it fights worse if it's under a certain amount of wounds. And Eldar Knights also do lose their invulnerable save when they are damaged. And that is a little bit different from Imperial Knights, but the caveat to that is that Eldar Knights do get their invulnerable save in combat as well to represent their greater speed and agility. So basically you target one of these damaged models, and you can remove that unit from the battlefield and set it up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches horizontally from all enemy models. And if this is not possible, there's a little bit of a typo there that I will fix later, but if this is not possible, then the unit is placed into strategic reserve and must come in the turn following in the reinforcement step. If the model is Titanic, it will cost 3 command points. If the model is not Titanic, it will cost 2 command points. So it is a very expensive stratagem because obviously it's very powerful, and it is also conditional. So with such a powerful effect, I needed to make sure that this stratagem was balanced. So there's 2 conditions here. First of all, needs to be a damaged model, so needs to be a model that is, on fairly few wounds left. And second of all, it needs to obviously be placed outside of 9 inches of enemy models. So, your opponent could essentially block you out of, making big plays or, bringing you into key positions on the board. So it's not like you can just, use this on purpose, get your model almost destroyed, and then expect to pop up anywhere on the battlefield. There are restrictions to it. You do need to be outside of 9 inches. And again, these models have a very large base size. They share the same base sizes as the Imperial Knight models. So the smaller Eldar Knights will have the Armiger base sizes, and the larger ones will have the, Knight Errant base sizes, essentially. They'll have the bigger base sizes. So it is going to be hard to maneuver them in the way you want, but this can be a very powerful stratagem if used correctly. And I think this stratagem also really embodies the craftiness of the Eldar, basically being able to trick your opponent into making a move or overextending themselves and then popping away to safety. All right, so let's take a look at our first HQ choice, basically our first character, which is the Oric Cble. So the Oric Cble is a 455-point knight model. It's a very large model, and if you look at its stat line, the first thing you'll notice is that it's noticeably faster than Imperial Knights. So the big Imperial Knights are movement 10, this thing is movement 12. So it's a little bit faster, but it's also 2 toughness less. Imperial Knights are typically toughness 12, and this is toughness 10. It also has a couple of less wounds than its Imperial Knight counterparts. So what this essentially means is that even though the Eldar Knights are quicker and have, craftier abilities and stuff like that, they are also much less durable. It does come with a 5+ invul save, not just against range attacks, but against all attacks. But when it is damaged, it does lose its invul save altogether. As far as its ranged weapons go, it does have the Warp Rift, which is a psychic attack. So this is essentially a Psyker Knight. Has 24-inch range with D3 attacks, Ballistic Skill 3+, Strength 8, AP -3, and Damage 3. So pretty good. It has the Blast keyword as well, and it also is an anti-demon weapon, which kind of feeds into the lore a little bit of Eldar Knights wanting to defend their Maiden Worlds or Lelathans from demonic incursions and other attacks. It also comes with a Shuriken Cannon array, which is essentially double twin Shuriken Cannons. So that's going to come in at Strength 6, AP -1, Damage 2, and 6 attacks with the twin link to Special Rule, and of course the Sustained 1. And that's basically just a kind of secondary weapon on this thing. Most of these Eldar Knights have a secondary weapon and a primary weapon at ranged. And that may seem a little bit underwhelming as far as its ranged weapons, but Eldar Knights are also very versatile. So they also have pretty powerful melee weapons as well. You can either give the Oric Cble a Prophetic Spear or Prophetic Blade. Both of them are pretty powerful. The Prophetic Spear is, higher damage, but the Prophetic Blade has more attacks. So it just depends on what you want to take with your Oric Cble and kind of what enemies you want to go after with it. So you do get that option with this model. As for its abilities, it has the Oric Protection, which gives it a 5+ Feel No Pain against psychic attacks, and it also has Unbound Fate, which is a psychic ability you can use in your command phase to select one friendly Eldar Knight unit within 12, and until the end of your turn, you may use Engines of Fate one additional time on that model. However, the restriction to this is you cannot use it twice on the same model on the same roll. So you cannot use it to give +2 to any result. So if you want to do, a save, you're going to need to only use it one time. So you're going to need to use it on multiple rolls. You can't use it on the same roll to give you +2 on any result. But that is a pretty powerful ability. Essentially, that means you're going to be able to, be a little bit more accurate, wound targets a little bit easier, or do more damage on your attacks. And remember that separate hit rolls and wound rolls are separate rolls for the purposes of this ability. So if you have 2 dice that you're rolling to hit, you can add +1 to both of those dice with this model's ability if you wish. And essentially what this model is it's kind of like the Farseer equivalent for Eldar Knights. So even though it is very expensive, it is pretty powerful in its own right. It's not the best in combat, it's not the best at ranged, but it does have a very powerful buff that it can give its other friendly Eldar Knights. And as you will see later on, this is going to have a lot more synergy with other heavier Eldar Knights as well. Okay, so now that we've covered the Oric Cble, let's go ahead and look at one of the smallest Eldar Knights, the Nimbus Pathfinder. So the Nimbus Pathfinder has movement 14, so it has a little bit more movement. However, it does have toughness 8. So, the armigers of the Imperial Knights and stuff like that, or the War Dogs of the Chaos Knights have toughness 10. These are, noticeably less durable, but they do have higher movement. It does come in at 140 points, which is significantly less than the Oric Cble, but, it costs kind of equivalent to the armiger models from the Imperial and Chaos Knights. If you look at its ranged weapons, this particular model has the Nimbus Long Rifle, which has precision, range 36, attacks 1, ballistic skill 3, strength 10, AP -2, and damage 4. This is great at picking off lesser characters and units and things like that. And it also has a twin scatter laser for some light infantry killing power. So it can clear out some light infantry that is infiltrating like Kroot, other Eldar Rangers, and stuff like that very easily. As far as its melee weapon goes, it does have the Nimbus Glaive, which is a decent weapon for taking out Marines in close combat. So this thing is basically a anti-scout type unit. It's great at dealing with enemy infiltrators and scouting elements. As for its abilities, it takes that to a step further with its telepathic interference, which prevents enemy units from infiltrating within 12 inches of this model. So basically, enemy units cannot deploy within 12 inches of this model if using the infiltrate ability. It also has, of course, a 5+ invulnerable save like all Eldar Knights, and that is about it. Oh, and it also can infiltrate itself, obviously, because its ability wouldn't make any sense if it couldn't. So this is a scouting element for the Eldar Knights. It's there to create a buffer between your heavier units and the enemy's scouting elements. And one of the things about knight armies in general, they have a low model count, so they do really need to focus more on positioning their models correctly. And the Nimbus Pathfinder can definitely help you get a little bit of a foothold on the board before your enemy swarms you. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone over and I've given you a little bit of a sneak peek into what the index has in it, how does the Eldar Knights Fandex play? So I have played a couple of games with most of the models now at a lower points value. The Eldar Knights are very fast and they have a lot of tricks up their sleeve. So between their enhancements, their stratagems, and their abilities, they have a lot of cool tricks and combos that they can pull off. The army and detachment bonuses do revolve around modifying certain dice rolls at your discretion and rewarding units by succeeding in eliminating their targets, which is a very Eldar thing to do. A trade-off for the speed and craftiness is, of course, the significantly less durability that the Eldar Knights have. And what I have realized is if they do get caught out of position, they are killed very quickly. A lot of the Eldar Knights are weaker than even your most basic tanks. So, the Eldar Knight kind of armiger equivalents are going to typically go down to a couple of last cannons if you can't make your invulnerable saves. So you do have to be careful with them. So what are my initial thoughts after playing 2 games at a fairly low point level? So again, I have played these guys in several games, but they've been at lower points. The models do feel powerful, but they're not overwhelming. They're not super OP. There wasn't anything that my opponent could do in certain situations to either counter or, make their saves properly and stuff like that. It was just, your good old-fashioned Warhammer game. The army is very fast and can cover distance very quickly. Between the +1 that they can get with an advance roll, and there's also a stratagem that lets them advance and shoot, which is very cool, they can cover distances quickly to score on objectives. And this is something that typically, Imperial Knight, Chaos Knight armies suffer through if they're not, running a bunch of the lesser knights, basically to score on objectives. The stratagems do blend really well with the units, and they do feel unique. So they're not just copy-paste of other stratagems in other books. They have their own unique feel, which is cool, but they also feel Eldar in a way, so that's also good. It is, again, like I said before, harder to score on objectives in low-point games as you don't have a lot of units, so that may just be a thing in lower-point games. In 2,000-point games, it might be a lot better than that, but I haven't play-tested at that point level yet, so I just don't know for sure. And lastly, they do hit hard against the right targets. They do more specialized damage, just like most Eldar units, but they're not more general purpose. So their weapons aren't as general purpose as their Imperial or Chaos Knight counterparts, But against the right targets, their weapons do hit very hard, especially with the buffs that you can give them and the synergies between different knight units. So different knight units also have synergies with each other, not just through enhancements and stratagems, which is really cool. And they've been really fun to play so far. I've had a blast playing them. I'm just playing them with cardboard right now, just, cardboard bases and sticks. That's basically what they are. There's no actual official models yet for them, although I do plan on getting some, proxy STL files made for them eventually. But that's going to also hinge on the success of, obviously the Kickstarter and on, people's cooperativeness on wanting to get that done in the first place, if they even want to, risk putting their work into a project like that. All right, so what is the Eldar Knights Kickstarter and its goals? So with the rough draft complete and playtesting in progress, I have restarted the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter's goal is $250, which should cover some of the artwork for the final draft and perhaps some STL file support. If you do want to support the project, be sure to check out the Kickstarter link in the description. And I am hoping with that $250 goal, we do reach that. That's basically what the old Kickstarter got to, but unfortunately, I set the cap a little too high. I set my ambitions for that a little too high, and it failed. But hopefully we can get the $250 and, maybe, hire an artist, real artist, not an AI generated kind of thing. And we can actually get some cool artwork for the final draft of the index. So in conclusion, I just want to say, all that stuff aside, it has been an amazing experience. And I really want to just thank the community for its support in helping me to finish the rough draft, giving me ideas, supporting me, giving me, inspiration and stuff like that. Continuing to, as weird as it seems, continuing to like the community posts on the updates and stuff like that has really, kind of inspired me to continue the work. And I thank you guys a lot for that. And there's a special thanks also to a couple of members of the channel's Discord that I want to go ahead and shout out. Frosty the Pirate, Drace, Grandmaster Oliviel, I hope I pronounced that right, and Mocking Asp is another player that has been, of great help. And also Woody. Good old Woody. So, I've had conversations with all of these people and they've really helped me and inspired me to, continue the work and stuff like that. And, they continue to support the project and, support the, Fandex in different ways. So thank you so much for that. And my hope is to include everybody who contributes to the project in the final iteration so that, the community knows that these people did help with the project. It wasn't just me. It was a community effort. And, once again, thank you so much for helping out. And my next goal is to finalize the Fandex and balance it as needed after playtesting, which will probably take about a month, I'm guessing. Probably take from now till the end of December to fully playtest the index and make sure that it is balanced for 10th edition, which it's looking to be. It's looking pretty on track for that. So I'm expecting to get that done before the end of the next month, before the end of December, so that you guys can have a final draft that is fully playable and fully balanced for 10th ed. All right, everybody, that is going to be it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Again, support the Kickstarter if you can. I would really greatly appreciate that. And thank you so much to my patrons and supporters who have supported the channel for the last year. Your help has been greatly appreciated, and I really appreciate the support. If you do want to become a Patreon member or help support the channel, I have free trials activated, which will grant you permanent access to our Discord community. Our Discord community is a community of Eldar players and enthusiasts who love talking about strategy, tactics, and of course, hobbying. I will leave the link for that in the description. I'm also an Amazon affiliate, and I do have a channel store page, so if you want to grab some Eldar-inspired apparel to rep your local game store or some discounted Eldar miniatures on Amazon, I will leave the links for those in the description as well. All right, everybody, that is going to be it for today. I'll see you next time, and have a good one, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving, and peace out.